Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Wheat from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show after Game 2, Round 2, as the Winnipeg Jets tie things up in their second-round series against the Dallas Stars. A pretty tidy game from beginning to end. Jets looking for a better start in that game. They get it right off the bat, get the power play going. Talk a little bit about that and the fact that you finally now have the five players, the band, back together for the Winnipeg Jets as they get all five members of their vaunted regular season power play back, and it immediately pays off in a goal for the Winnipeg Jets. And then I think more than anything, you get the return, the complete and full return of Connor Hellebuyck on this night. Now, I think for a vast swath of the game, the Winnipeg Jets got to their game. Their blueprint, I think, was in full display. We saw this game looked very similar to a couple of the games we saw the Jets play against the Dallas Stars. Hey, down the stretch, Dallas Stars had a chance to catch the Winnipeg Jets for the President's Trophy. They had two key games against the Jets down the stretch, and they both looked like that. I mean, this is a pattern that is setting in between the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars. It was a little bit different in game one, but you saw me. I had suggested that that game, yes, the Dallas Stars won that game, and yes, give them credit for the way that they were able to pull that out. I thought the Jets were the better team in that game, and like I'd said in our last podcast, that to me was the first game these playoffs, the Winnipeg Jets, I thought were the better team and didn't come out with the victory. Clearly, they weren't the better team in the three losses they had to the St. Louis Blues. And in the end, I think for a good chunk of Game 7, the St. Louis Blues were the better team, and then the Jets kind of turned it in their direction all the way through the overtimes. And by the end of that game, it was hard to deny that the Jets were the better team as they came out on top in that. But I mean, there's so much to like about what the Jets did in this game, but you could make the argument, the Dallas Stars sounds like they're trying to make that argument that, Connor Hellebuyck makes a couple of those Connor Hellebuyck saves that had the building roaring with MVP chants. And maybe this is a different game. And by my count, I'll do the eye test of goals saved above expected. There's there's at least two, but maybe three saves there that Connor Hellebuyck basically goes God mode and steals on this night. One is the glove save that he makes that Josh Morrissey cleans up afterwards, and then there's another cross ice pass that he stops the tap in on the back door, and then he does so again, I believe, with the late penalty in the game where he shuts the door there. Connor Hellebuyck, hey, we've talked about it. We spilled a lot of ink, so to speak, in writer speak. And I know we don't do that on this show here, but to use a term and lean on a term, we've spilled a lot of ink on Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck, playoff Connor Hellebuyck, a myth. And we haven't seen that player. This, to me, maybe the best game we've ever seen from Connor Hellebuyck. There's none of this, Game 7, yeah, okay, he let in some bad goals, but he closed the door when it was time. You're not needing to bend over backwards to create a narrative on this night that Connor Hellebuyck, okay, well, he had this problem and he had this problem and he had this problem, but he showed up at the right time, and ignore the fact that a lot of the times, you're hiding the fact that his team bailed him out on a night where he didn't have his stuff. Last game, I thought Connor Hellebuyck was great. I didn't think he had a chance on any of the three goals that went in, a la Jordan Binnington in Game 7 of that series. All four goals I didn't think he had a chance on. On this night, Connor Hellebuyck just was not going to put himself in a position where it's like, well, you had a good game, but no buts. This is a no but performance by Connor Hellebuyck as he comes out and absolutely puts his mark on this game. Hey, I think it's pretty darn good analysis that we had. I talked about it in this podcast. I talked about it on our Sportsnet platforms about the idea that I personally thought there seemed to be a weight lifted on Connor Hellebuyck with that 1.6 seconds left goal. And it just seemed to, his shoulders back. He's out in his crease a little bit more. I think whatever was going on in his head shattered. And I'll tell you this, and maybe Ken can weigh in on it as well. But talking with him in the post game, a player who's typically tried to shy away from the media for the vast majority of playoffs that we've seen him, came out, talked about this game afterwards, and seemed to be having, there wasn't a guarded Connor Hellebuyck. There wasn't, a firm Connor Hellebuyck or a distant Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck seemed in the moment, seemed to really be enjoying himself, seemed to really enjoy taking the questions. That's a refreshing thing to see. Maybe as a journalist, you put too much into it. But I always say this, as journalists, we put players on TV, we ask them questions because we're trying to be a conduit to you, the fan, and that player. And I thought if that's the opportunity that Connor Hellebuyck is taking, he reached out to the fans and showed the fans that Connor Hellebuyck, is in a really good place, which the Winnipeg Jets just may be in after winning game 2 and knotting up this series. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business to see what his take is on the whole thing. Ken's been setting up for like 5 minutes here. Maybe he'd like to join us. I'm going to play his music, and if he's not ready, he's not ready. That's his problem. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here he comes. Kenny, I'm going to tell you, as I was tap dancing to get you into the show here, and whatever setup you had going on back there, you reminded me of that golfer that goes up to the tee and gets behind, addresses the ball, and then twitches and moves and shakes and does things for about 3 minutes before he finally strokes the ball. But we all know with Ken, Mr. 2 holes in one round, that it doesn't matter what the setup looks like. It's the result that always looks good, just like what he looks like right now with his Vittorio Rossi rocket. And I got a brand new Vittorio Rossi. You see the pin there? That always means Vittorio Rossi outfit going on here. I thought it was a little Bieksa Juice stole my look on this night. He had the blue shirt and the blue tie, but I think we got the same tie, the same suit rock in here. I can understand why. Exactly. I think it looks like $1 million. It's fire. And if you want to have that look of fire and look like what Kenny looks like, regardless of his setup, that result that he has out on the golf course, you know what to do. Head on down to Vittorio Rossi. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you upright. Ken, take it away. What did you see in this game?
Yeah, impressive. Again, bounce back, I think, would be too strong a word to describe it. But, I mean, the Jets needed to be better, and they were a lot better. In terms of the setup, apologies. The room beside me, the extra lighting turned off after I was set up. So I had to change rooms here, and now I have the sun shining down on the one side here. But in terms of the Jets' effort, it was pretty impressive overall. Structurally, mostly sound. Yes, there were a couple breakdowns. Yes, Connor Hellebuyck had to make a couple of ridiculous saves that made him look like himself. But overall, the Jets, Pete DeBoer, he liked his game better than, Scott. He didn't particularly care for the assessment that most of the stuff was self-inflicted. He thought his group played a pretty good road game. So in game 1 and in game 2, there was no doubt as to which way this game was going. Yes, I mean, DeBoer saying if they had scored one of those goals in the second when they had a push, could it have been a different game? Could momentum have swung? Sure. But we didn't see the Dallas Stars attack the way that they are normally attacking. And a lot of that had to do with the structure that they were trying to break down. I mean, we're going to do the behind the scenes here. I mean, Sean, the Dallas Stars spent the majority of the night high flipping the puck into the neutral zone. Even if Pete DeBoer didn't like it, I mean, that's what was happening. I mean, anyways, just whatever.
We're gonna go there.
We'll dig into that in a second.
We're gonna dig into that. Don't worry about it.
Okay, good.
You make sure that you don't need to shy away from it, Ken. We'll talk about it and we'll get it out of the way. But you keep going with your
In terms of the Jets, Nikolai Ehlers needed a big game and had one. Yes, there was some good fortune involved, of course. Anytime you bank a pass off the skate of a defenseman in Esa Lindell, who was otherwise mostly brilliant in the game today, where his team was beaten 4-0. Yes, there's some good fortune there. Nikolai Ehlers, his assist on Gabe Vilardi's goal, that's not good fortune. That's smart spacing, and that's finding an open body. On the empty netter, that is a turnaround clapper that goes the length of the ice. Is there some good fortune? Sure. But Nikolai Ehlers was flying in this one, Sean. We talked about it at the end of the last show. Nikolai Ehlers' feet were there, but his hands weren't quite at the normal level of Nikolai Ehlers. And yes, some fans are taking the time to, again, was it true that Nikolai Ehlers had 4 goals in 40 playoff games going into tonight? Yes, it was true. But he's up to 6 now after having 2 goals and an assist in a game the Jets absolutely had to have. This was the best game that he's played in a while, and not just because he had offense. He was buzzing, making things happen, dancing around. Power play was moving because he had the puck on his stick a lot. Gabe Vilardi, he spoke after the game. I spoke to him before game 1, Sean, about jumping in on the fast moving treadmill. Scott O'Neill said he'd been riding the bike and he jumped down to an IndyCar track today. Gabe talked, his words were, he basically jumped into a war for the previous 4 games. He was airlifted into game 5 and was like, holy smokes. I've been working hard here, but this pace and this physical nature is something else. So I thought Gabe Vilardi was looking more like himself today. Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele had a bunch of chances. The Adam Lowry line churning like mad. Big goal from Lowry, but I love the fact that Scott O'Neill pointed out what we talked about so many times, Sean. Often it's the third line setting the table for the first line or the second line. Today it was the fourth line of the Jets setting the table for the Lowry line to have the, extend the lead goal. Because that fourth line of Barron, Tanev, and Iafallo had an incredible churning shift where all 3 of them changed at different points in the offensive zone before Lowry's goal happened. B. Henderson, did Fleury Miller put Shen Stanley in the...
Hold on, let's get into because I'm going to actually use this later as our Flame and Comfort concert. Excuse me.
Anyway, just quickly, I like the third pairing. Third pairing, very good. Josh Morrissey, exceptional in this game today, Sean. Jets missed him, obviously, in game 1. And, that's not the reason the Jets lost. But when you are missing a Norris Trophy candidate, it's a factor. And the Dallas Stars know this just as well as the Jets do, and even more because Miro Heiskanen, another general perennial candidate for the Norris Trophy, has been out since January 28th. So they missed their number 1 guy also. So I don't want to hear any of this, it's only the Jets guys having injuries. Well, today the Jets were mostly healthy as far as we know. Logan Stanley may not be fully healthy, and to me, the fact Luke Shen played only just under 11 minutes in game 1 would suggest he's also not particularly healthy. But again, guys are fighting through things at this time of year. I liked what I saw from the third pairing. Neil Pionk was channeling his inner 2021 against Connor McDavid, getting a little headlock, guitar smash, El Kabong on Mikko Rantanen early in the game. Once again, the Jets did a great job on Rope Hintz. Yes, Hintz had that tap on the back door that you referenced, Sean, in the opening drive with the net empty and Hellebuyck trying to preserve the shutout. There was Rope Hintz on the doorstep with what looked to be a backdoor tap in, yet it was stopped by Connor Hellebuyck to preserve his first shutout since 2021 in the Stanley Cup playoffs in game 2 against the Oilers, Sean, on May 21st. Not great at math, but that's over 4 years ago. That's a long time between playoff shutouts for a guy who goes into every game trying to get a shutout. So impressive showing by Hellebuyck, of course, as we mentioned. But again, if you can find a passenger in this game for the Jets, Sean, I'm all ears. Let's just put it that way.
Okay, we got to get to this because most people seem to already know about this, and a lot of people, if they don't know it, we'll get into it. There was a bit of there was a big bite back from Coach DeBoer in response to a question that I was asking. I love going behind the scenes on these kind of things, and I love being held accountable in situations like this. BS says Renny didn't, or sorry, Pete didn't like the leading question. This isn't right. This isn't a leading question,
No.
but what it is it was me editorializing in this situation. I'd asked him about like the problem of them flipping the puck back to center, because if you see for the vast majority of that game, we know how the Winnipeg Jets like to play. The Jets' idea of defending is to pressure you so much that you give the puck back. One of the reasons they struggled with the St. Louis Blues is the Blues wouldn't do that, and they found a way to get back on the other side of that Jets pressure where there was a lot of wide open ice, and that's how the Blues challenged the Jets so much through this series. This was your prototypical, and I've said this in the past, Ken, I've probably said it numerous times on this show, when the Jets are working, their opposition are basically flipping the puck back to center ice and just trying to alleviate some pressure.
Yeah.
But it's a turnover for the most part. Every once in a while, and there was a couple times it happened on this night where that flip puck ended up being like, the Stars could challenge it, maybe chip it, and maybe get past the guy. It's still a little bit of a hope play, but we've seen enough of the Jets, Ken, to know that that is not a good scenario for the opposition when they're in here and they're just flipping pucks out, right? Now, is it editorializing for me to say that when I referred to it as a problem? Absolutely it is. But there's not for a second that I actually think that Pete DeBoer doesn't agree that it's a problem. But that doesn't matter. I'm a journalist. It's not my job to editorialize. It's my job to ask questions. And because I editorialized, Pete DeBoer jumped on that. And he said, I didn't realize you were a coach. I tried to move past the barb and get him to answer the question. He clearly didn't want to answer the question. And I do think that he took the out in this one, because what you're looking at is a problem that they didn't do a very good job of solving in this game, right? And so I think his response in that moment is to take a shot at me, right? To expose where I made a mistake there, and I did. Got to learn from these things and then move on and get out from asking these questions. And believe me, I get this, okay? Pete DeBoer forgot more after breakfast about hockey today than Renny will ever know about hockey. And I can understand for head coaches how it will get really frustrating being asked questions about things that are sore spots. And believe me, the puck's getting flipped to center were clearly a wide open exposed nerve, and it must drive them nuts to, it drives them nuts, I'm sure, Ken, the same way it does when people say, well, why didn't you just ask them this, or why didn't you do that? And the funny part about it is all the times when we have people on this show who are saying, well, you guys should ask this, you should ask that. I get people who send me questions all the time, and they'll challenge my courage and say, why don't you ask the coach why he continues to play the worst defenseman in the NHL, who's not even an AHL defenseman, blah, 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 and ask it just like that. There's a reason you don't do that, because that's not good journalism. You're not supposed to editorialize. I got burnt on that, right? But I get that Pete DeBoer is not appreciative of having the sore spots of his games picked at by a journalist. And just so we know here, because I always talk about impartiality, I'm kind of glad this happened in a way, because it was, for the most part, Scott Arniel who was biting back at me in the last series, right? Like, Ken, you were there for it. We never talked about it on the show. People talked about it in the chat room. I always say this: when I was a journalist, a news journalist at CBC, I remember I used to get incessant mail when I covered politics, mail, email, whatever you want to call it at the time, of conservatives, NDP, Green Party, liberals, all attacking me and calling me someone from whatever party they liked the least, right? And that was always telling me that I was on to something, right? If you thought that I was the enemy of your party, it usually meant that I was on to something, but everyone just wants people to agree with them, right? And a lot of times what coaches want is they don't want to be pushed on things. And hey, there's a lot of places to go. A lot of journalists go into situations like that, and they'll ask the nice questions. They'll, well, what did you like about your game? Oh, once things turned around, oh, you said that if Connor Hellebuyck doesn't make that save, is this a game that you can kind of pull out of the fire and stuff like that, right? And there's a place for those kind of questions, because a lot of folks out there, we're talking to a whole bunch of them right now, are fans, and they want to hear the positive message. They want to know that everything is going to be all right. They want to know that if Connor Stars fans probably want to know that if Connor Hellebuyck didn't stop that shot, it's in the back of the net and everything swings and the Stars walk away and they win that game 4-3, and now they're up 2-0. That's how fans work. That's what they want. So there's a place for asking those questions. It's not my style. I'm trying to break down the game. I'm trying to get down to the story. And a lot of times you have to ask questions in touchy places. Ken always behind the scenes refers to me as a pit bull when it comes to journalism. I think it's my job to use my access to try and get to the real story. And sometimes the people involved in these games don't want to talk about the real story. They definitely don't want it out front in the media, and they definitely don't want people questioning them about their job and the things that they may have not got right about their job. So I get this. Pete DeBoer, I covered him last year in the conference final.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time he's bit at me. He bit at me in the conference final last year. I think in every game he lost in that series, he bit back at someone in the media. He told Tim Cowlishaw basically where to go and to F off in that series. This is very common from Pete DeBoer. This is how he responds to losses. I think, though, in the pressure that gets to a coach or in the way that they respond like that, there's a story. And I do think asking the question tonight about what essentially amounted to the Dallas Stars not being able to handle the Jets' forecheck and basically trying to alleviate pressure by flipping it to center ice. That's the reason for the response. I just gave him the opening. Shame on me for giving him that opening. To be honest, though, Ken, I think if I wouldn't have given him the opening, there would have been some kind of lashback regardless.
Yeah, and I mean, the other part too is like sometimes, coaches may not want to talk about it publicly, but we'll both be shocked if part of their video session before game 3 will not include discussion about why are we flipping the puck into the neutral zone and feeding their transition. I mean, that's part of it. Yes, sometimes you just got to make the play, live to fight another day, get it out of the zone. But yeah, I mean, Pete DeBoer didn't like his team's game. I mean, there's no way that he could have liked it. They weren't playing the way they did when they won a incredible 7-game series against Colorado, and they weren't as crisp as they were in game 1. So again, if we were looking at the series going into it, Sean, we were both pretty sure this is going 6 or 7. And it's not a surprise that these two teams split the first 2 games. Yes, now the Jets got to go on the road and do something they did not do against St. Louis, and that's win a game on the road. Dallas is a very good home ice team. But the Jets were also one of the best road teams in the NHL last year. So it remains a great matchup between two very good teams. Today, Pete DeBoer didn't have enough good players going in the game, and the Jets basically had their whole team operating at or near the height of their power. So that also would have been frustrating for Pete DeBoer. I mean, Pete's one of the smartest coaches in the NHL. He's been to 4 of the last 5 conference finals. He's going to have his team ready for game 3. Ready for game 3. But yeah, I mean, he was frustrated because his team had very little going outside of the couple of 10-bellers that Connor Hellebuyck made. Would there have been some disappointment on that Wyatt Johnston chance that Hellebuyck we thought saved initially and that it rolled off the outside of the post? Of course. But, Sean, we watched the Dallas Stars very closely. And like you said, you covered the conference final firsthand. This was not peak Dallas Stars hockey today. They sat back way too much. The Jets imposed their will on the game, and that allowed them to really get themselves going. And, it's been a little bit surprising. Wyatt Johnston, Sean, we talked about it. Way better in game 2 than he was in game 1. And Sean, the beauty of Wyatt Johnston's game, he's been exceptional at home on home ice, including in game 7 when he had the GWG. So he'll probably elevate further. Rope Hintz has not had a good start to this series. And you can be sure that Pete DeBoer will be trying to pump up Rope Hintz in terms of getting him ready for game 3, because he hasn't been himself. He's got 1 assist in 2 games, and he's not using his blazing speed to create every shift like he normally does. He got hit hard again today in front of the Jets bench, and they've done a good job of limiting his space. But again, a lot of that is the Jets playing very well, right? One good thing if you're Pete DeBoer, Jason Robertson, more involved in the game today. Jets are going to have to be aware of him as he gets ready to play his 3rd game. Turnover by Neil Pionk at the end of the first period. Jason Robertson had a great chance. Hellebuyck had to make a pad save right as time expired. So, again, in terms of the exchange, Sean, I don't think the question was offside personally. Again, we heard this about, Jim Montgomery was very dismissive when we've wanted to talk a lot about strategy in the first game, and he didn't want to take any credit, right? When you asked him about the chess match, that's not a surprise. Pete
Until
DeBoer,
after the series, right? Which means we were on to something. And when he came out after the series, Monty, and talked about the chess match that had existed between his coaching. So, I mean, yes, these coaches, you talk to them and they want to downplay it in the middle of the series. And then when it's all said and done, they'll come out and they'll talk about it, right? It's not our job to wait for them to talk about it and point it out. It's our job to point out what we're seeing.
Be ahead of the game, not behind the curve.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyways, let's move on. I don't, like I said, I don't think that it was an offside question. I think Pete was a little bit sour with how the game went, and if he thought it was editorializing and he took an easy out, I mean, that seemed like a little bit of a distraction away from maybe some of the things he didn't particularly enjoy about the game.
For sure. And let me just be clear. The fact that we're talking about this, we like to give a little bit of a peek behind the scenes. And clearly this is what people are talking about. So that's what we're talking about at this moment. I'll say this. I don't like being part of the story, right? Like as a journalist, that's one thing that you're supposed to avoid doing. And so and for the people out there who are saying, oh, Sean's in his head and this and kind of stuff, that's not, like I said, we just came from a series where Arneal had been snippy with a question of mine after game 3. And I think it was after game 6, both of them down in St. Louis. And hey, like I remember, Ken, you'll remember this one. There was a point at which I remember Blake Wheeler had said to me on 2 different occasions, you're always going for headlines. You're always looking for headlines, aren't you? And so the first time I let it slide, and then he said it again. I said, well, Blake, we're journalists. We're not looking for back page news. We're trying to ask about the story. That's the story. If that feels like you're going for headlines, well, maybe headlines are headlines for a reason, because it's the news that should be talked about, right? But the fact of the matter is, it's the way I see my job. My job is to get out to get out conversations, to get out the real story of what's happening. Sometimes when you're talking about, egos or people who are, giants of their industry, which is what everyone in the NHL is, there's going to be some pushback. That's what we saw here tonight. But it's not something I strive for, but it's something that I understand happens when you ask questions that have the potential to touch a nerve. And clearly that did tonight. Regardless, I was given the Pristine Roofing wake-up call by Pete DeBoer because of my editorializing in my question. And that means it's time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing directly at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call, folks. You will be happy that you did. Let's get to some of the other things that we should be talking about in this. Quick touch on the power play.
Yeah, I like the movement again. I thought there was progress, Sean, in game 1. We know that 4 of the 5 guys on the unit have been out for various lengths of time in these Stanley Cup playoffs. So naturally, it's going to take a little bit of time before it's cooking. But it was better in games 5, 6, and 7 at times. It was good in game 1, I thought, in terms of the movement. No, there wasn't as much finish, but there's been wrinkles, right? So, Game 7, wrinkle is Perfetti's redirection. Great tip play. Today, I thought the movement was really good. It looked like they found a little bit of space in the pop position. Ehlers found himself open, and then the puck gets down to Velarde, and Velarde gets himself one on the doorstep, which we've seen all year long. When Velarde's going, the puck finds him around the doorstep, and for him to get going, I think is massive for the Jets. I mean, what some folks have forgotten, and Gabe Velarde had an awesome year, 27 goals, but it was a little quiet offensively for him prior to his injury. He needed to get himself going offensively, and that in terms of goal scoring, and this could be something that pushes him forward. Very similar to Ehlers. Ehlers in the playoffs has not produced at the requisite level as what he's done in the regular season. When he's healthy, he can be a point a game player. That hasn't been the case, but he was very good today. So power play, like the movement, better job. Not dusting it off as often. Morrissey got some shots from the top. Kyle Connor got some looks. All five guys involved in the play. I thought it was impressive. Also, the second unit, Sean, when they got out there fairly early in that 4-minute double minor to Sagan, I thought they actually had some zone time and some maneuvering around as well, which is important. I mean, Sean, one of the reasons the Jets operated just under 30% this year on the power play was that their 2 units were going, right? It wasn't just a 1-unit show. This was a 2-unit show. The top unit, yes, they're one of the deadliest in the NHL, but the second unit had tons of goals on the power plays. So that's something the Jets needed also. Anyways, did you see anything structurally that caught your attention?
I just think it's right off the bat when you get Josh Morrissey in there, he's got a different stick, right? He's got different handed than Neil Pionk, which kind of changes things around. I think it gets back to the idea of that first most dangerous pass when you get it back to the point going across to Kyle Connor for that shot. Yes, we know Kyle Connor hasn't scored in a long time, but you have to respect that shot. So right off the bat, I think a sign of that shot being respected is the space that is open down below by the goal line, right? And that's good news for both Nikolai Ehlers. It's good news for Gabriel Velarde. Nikolai Ehlers moves in and tries a play at some point, and what happens is it's just this constant kind of it's like grabbing a piece of plasticine or a piece of Play-Doh and like pulling it this way and pulling it this way and shaping it the way that you want it to go. At first, it starts out with the box that the Dallas Stars are trying to have in place, moving up and trying to take that away from Kyle Connor and getting a little bit higher up. When you take it to the front of the net like Nick Ehlers does in that situation, it causes the box to collapse down towards the net a little bit, and that's how you find that space in between, right? Nikolai Ehlers ends up being the guy, gets that space in between, puts it towards the net, off the post, hangs around. There's nobody down there at that point, because once Nikolai Ehlers is in there, the box has to collapse up towards him, and now Gabriel Velarde has all kinds of time. I've said this before. I said it on Sportsnet the other day. The thing that makes that power play so dangerous is because you've got one of the best trigger men in the NHL and Kyle Connor to shoot that puck, right? You've got Gabriel Velarde, who I think is, because if you think about this, everything kind of changed for the Winnipeg Jets in their power play when Gabriel Velarde arrived. And we saw it right in that very first preseason game that he ever played. He's able to make those passes, but he's able to work down low. And if you leave him alone down low, there's a good chance he'll score on you. So I think it's just a numbers game. If you have to park one guy to stop Kyle Connor from shooting, a guy like Alexander Ovechkin, right? Then you take one guy out. Now it's essentially a 4-on-3. And then if you leave Gabe Velarde alone, then what's going to happen is he's going to burn you. And then now you have to park a guy by Gabe Velarde. And all of a sudden now you've turned a 5-on-4 into a 3-on-2. And we know as those numbers shrink and the advantage eventually gets down to 2-1, that's where your greatest advantage is. So I think tonight it's a little bit of a, it works out for them. I was thinking, as far as hockey god bounces go, we had so many people who were lamenting the Jets' lack of bounces in the last game.
Right.
Clearly their second one, although the defensive positioning, it goes off Lindell's skate on that second goal.
Yeah, Ken. Lindell, yes.
The defensive positioning is one that he has to pay attention to the opposition player that the puck is trying to get to, so he has to turn his skates in a way. The other part about it that is a little strange is Lindell is actually moving his skate to try and stop that puck and ends up redirecting it in. But That's a lucky bounce. That's a hockey god's bounce for the Winnipeg Jets. I thought this one too, how it slips past Ottinger and then hits the post and comes back and hits the back of Ottinger's leg. And it's not by much, but if that puck doesn't hit Ottinger's leg, it just moves back out into the slot where the Dallas Stars grab it and fire it down the ice. Instead, it gets stuck in behind the goaltender, and now you've got all day to work. Couple of bounces that went the Winnipeg Jets way, but when you are, as good as the Jets are in situations like that, you force the defense to collapse on you, and that just leaves other areas wide open. If you can get the puck there, you got a good chance of getting the puck into the net. I thought that this is some fortuitous bounces that go the Jets way, and now those fortuitous bounces sometimes are exactly what it takes to get things going, as well as the fact that Gabe Vilardi himself talked about, he's starting to feel more like himself. Nikolai Ehlers looked like he's feeling more like himself. Mark Scheifele was out for a little bit. Josh Morrissey just getting back into the game. I said this before, if the longer the playoffs go on, the more dangerous I think the Jets' weapon of the power play becomes, and can start being that kind of power play that won game after game after game for them in the regular season. Jets could be rounding into form here, and that could be one of the biggest weapons they have going for them.
Yeah, right on. And again, their penalty kill has been excellent, Sean, in the playoffs here so far, top 5, I believe. So they're very aggressive. But what that means is if you go up against an aggressive kill as the power play, you have to find those pockets that are available. There are windows open when a team is as aggressive as a team like the Stars are. But you got to be moving the puck crisply. You got to be moving it quickly, and you got to get that attack mentality, because it's tougher to be aggressive when you're chasing the rebound and the retrieval, right? Rather than attacking the pressure points on the penalty kill.
Okay. B. Henderson says, did Fleury put Shen and Stanley in the corner for at least the series? This is a good question and a way of getting back to the third pairing. And I just want to say this. I think it most definitely paid off for the Winnipeg Jets to put those two players in tonight. They both had an absolutely great game. Hey, sometimes coaches have a feeling. Was it Pete DeBoer who said that? That sometimes, coaches are just going off of a feeling, and putting those players in paid off, no doubt. And if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt-free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online. Ken, take it away on the third pairing and what you saw from them tonight.
Yeah, impressive game for sure. The minutes for Miller were close to 18 last game, Sean, and back down to 12:49 today, so just under 13. So they went pretty heavy. Again, also having Morrissey back is an impact there for sure. Morrissey 22:39. Colin was steady for sure, not as involved offensively. He just had credit for the one shot on net, one hit, 2 block shots. I like the feistiness that he plays with. He's not as physical as Luke Shen, obviously, not as hard hitting, but he is a kind of guy that can be a pest and get under the skin of the opponent. He has played for the Stars previously. He's got some history with some of these guys as teammates and friends, but still not afraid to play a physical game. Liked a lot of what I saw from Hayden Fleury. His feet and his mobility were also fantastic again today, Sean. Fleury had 22 shifts for 1440. He has an assist in the game, 2 shot attempts, 2 hits, 1 giveaway, 1 block shot. Again, I think I see a guy with a lot of confidence in Hayden Fleury right now. Fleury's the kind of guy, Sean, and again, when he got hurt on December 23rd, he didn't get back to the level he was at prior to December 23rd. And yeah, some people can say it didn't go well when he and Neil Pionk were on the second pairing. It didn't go as well. That's accurate. But Hayden Fleury had a really good stretch of games before he got hurt the first time this year. And then it took him a while to get back to that level. And then he also was parked for a good chunk of the stretch run as the Jets went with Logan Stanley on that third pairing. So his ability to stay ready, Sean, and again, I've talked to I talked to Hayden a bunch over the course of the year. This is a guy who's gone through a ton. When you're a top 5, you're a top 10 NHL first rounder, and you're still trying to find yourself in, at the age that he's at, you've been through a lot, and you've got a little different perspective on life and in hockey in general. When he plays an assertive game and a simple game, he can be incredibly effective. This is not news to people who have been watching Hayden Fleury since he, played for the Red Deer Rebels. But again, does this mean, does one or two games mean that, some guys are parked for the rest of a series? I mean, no, it doesn't mean that. It means, that today it worked well. Does it mean that Luke Schenn is done for the playoffs? Of course not. There could be a bunch of injuries. There's going to be other days where the Jets are going to want Luke Schenn's shot blocking and physical nature and penalty killing and box outs. All the reasons they traded for Luke Schenn, they don't go up in smoke because Colin Miller had 2 strong games in a row. That's not how it works. So, but at the same time, I give Colin Miller a lot of credit for stepping into the lineup and doing a great job. But again, when you're on, he's not a bubble player, but he is a player that has been in and out of the lineup. So when you're in that situation, you are constantly having to play at the top of your game because there are other players who are around the same level as you that are also under consideration. And the same goes for the forwards. 2 of the 3 forwards that sat out today, Sean, 5th line guys, they have goals in the playoffs. Jared Anderson-Dolan has had a strong playoff. David Gustafsson, when he came out of the bullpen, scored a goal and had a strong start to the playoffs. So, the Jets needed 8 defensemen through the first 9 games, and they're going to need more of those defensemen as they move forward. So I don't see them being parked. Right now, Hayden Fleury is clearly ahead of Logan Stanley based on his mobility. But the Jets played Logan Stanley a lot down the stretch, so they believe in him. And if there's an opportunity to get him back in at some point, they may do so. Is it going to be immediate? I don't think so. But again, we're not applying for the job, and we don't make the decisions. We just try to, call it how we see it and see where things go from there. I mean, do you view it differently than I do?
No, and I think Sunny Side Up here says, but we don't need Schenn as an enforcer, ? They won't stop coming after our guys. There will be blood. Like, this is a different series. And someone, actually, there was a really good, Captain Underpants here says the remaining teams in the playoffs are a good matchup for the Jets. The Blues grinding game was a tough series. Jets have more time now with less physicality to play their game. Look, these 2 players who they brought in aren't shrinking violets, and it's not like they wouldn't have done well in the Blues series, but the Blues series was a battle of attrition, and you needed like a rugged level to it. And I think the difference that you're seeing, so think of Colin Miller's game tonight. Colin Miller, I said this, Cole Perfetti talked about needing to be a bit of a prick, right? Colin Miller is that. Colin Miller gets in, and I think he knows how to get under the skin of the opposition. And it's not like he's a small guy, but he's not Luke Schenn. He's not this big, huge, bruising guy. And that's what the Jets needed, is defensemen who could endure the punishment that the St. Louis Blues were going to be meting out. That's not happening in this series. It's not likely to happen in this series. There was a couple times, Ken, in this game. One of them, I believe, was a play by Josh Morrissey. Actually, I don't think it was Morrissey. I can't remember which Winnipeg Jet it was, but it was one of their defensemen. He was moving the puck, and Duchesne was moving in on him. And I was fully expecting, because, you kind of, just like kind of the coaches talked about the last game, the Jets were kind of locked in on the Blues and what kind of hockey you needed to play the Blues. It's like, we're not playing the Blues anymore. This is a different style of hockey. We need to play differently. I was locked into that, and Duchesne was moving in on the guy, and I thought, okay, here comes a big hit. Keep throwing the hits. It's a 7-game series, all that kind of stuff. And he turned away from it, right? Because that's not really what you're going to get from the vast majority of the Dallas Stars players. So you don't need to necessarily endure. When I first saw that Schenn was coming out of the lineup, I'll be honest, I was a little surprised about it.
Same.
Watching the game and the way that it played out today, I'm not at all surprised. Fleury has been phenomenal at moving the puck, and yet he's still throwing the body. He's doing great with his puck retrievals, kind of giving you that speed that you're looking for. And it's hard to argue with the results that you saw tonight from the inability, for the most part, of the Dallas Stars to pin the Jets in their own zone. They were having issues with that. Colin Miller, kind of along the same lines. They fit the series that is being played here. And that's what depth is all about. You talked about the forwards of the Winnipeg Jets who were able to go out, and David Gustafsson has points in the playoffs, and Jared Anderson-Dolan. You touched on all those things. This is where depth becomes important, and it's starting to show more and more and more that Kevin Cheveldayoff really went out and got a lot of players out there that I think a lot of people just saw as 6th, 6th/7th defenseman in the NHL, right? But what he actually did was he went out and he got depth guys who can play all different sorts of roles for you. And that is kind of the important part about this is now the Winnipeg Jets are able to, match up different stylistically, because I thought the exact same thing as Captain Underpants in that if the Jets were susceptible, and I believe they were, to what the St. Louis Blues were doing to them, meting out that punishment, you're thinking, well, they better not run into that again. I don't know that outside of maybe going to the Stanley Cup final and seeing the Washington Capitals there, I don't necessarily know that there's a team left. Florida would be a Shen type game. Agree. And then Florida could be that team as well. And Florida
Vegas
with that win tonight. Vegas could be that as well. Actually, it's funny because I'm kind of thinking of the path. You know what? Rennie's so locked in on his picks where I have the Edmonton Oilers and the Toronto Maple Leafs going to the Stanley Cup final that I'm thinking, well, the Oilers aren't going to do that against the Winnipeg Jets, and the Toronto Maple Leafs aren't going to do that against the Winnipeg Jets. But just to close out the point, lots of depth for the Jets, lots of different options, and what you saw from Scott Arniel on this night is a guy who has a good feeling, a good finger on the pulse of what this series needs. He pulls in some defensemen that absolutely fit what this series needed on this night, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Dallas Stars respond to the style of game that the Jets are playing right now, because, to go back to the coaching matchup that we talked about, and I'd said it, I've got to say it both ways. I said it in the first series. There was a lot of times that the St. Louis Blues were challenging the Winnipeg Jets stylistically, blueprint wise, and Monty had done a phenomenal job of it. Right now, to me, it looks like there's a decided edge in the coaching department for Scott Arniel in this series.
Just quickly, one quick thing, like folks saying that Dallas isn't hitting. The tinting of the glasses needs to be adjusted. I mean, Leon Bichelle had 6 hits today. Alex Petrovic had 9, and one of them sent Captain Adam Lowry into the box. I mean, no, and I mean, that was a great collision between two big, strong men. And anyways, hits can sometimes, the numbers are, they are what they are. I mean, but there is some physical nature to the series. So anyways, I just don't think it's great to make a snap judgment. I mean, it is true that the mobility of Miller has worked out well in the first 2 games, no doubt about that. But I think the Jets are going to need, I'll be surprised if they don't need at least 7 of the defensemen in this series, and they may need 8. So, but to your point, I mean, even Dylan Coghlan is a guy that falls into that depth role that I think the Jets would be comfortable using Dylan Coghlan in the playoffs if they had to, based on the season that he had. So that just reinforces your thoughts about the depth. And Anderson Dolan, we talked about a ton in the first round, Sean. He spent the majority of the year with the Moose and then looked like it might be almost impossible to take him out of the lineup with how hard he was playing, finishing every check, getting a goal early. So that was definitely, it was a quieter summer for Kevin Cheveldayoff, but those depth pieces have, come to play in these playoffs.
Ken, give Sweet Lou a shout out before we move on.
Yeah, right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, buying, selling, curious what that house on the corner might be selling for, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of this community, including our podcast. And springtime is usually a good time when the houses are moving, Sean. So if you are in need of realty help, Lou Ferlin is your guy.
Okay, let's do some quick hits here because we're going to have to get into the awards here soon. But let's do some quick hits. Your thoughts in about a minute or two on Nikolai Ehlers on this night.
Loved his game. Best game in months. And again, Nikolai Ehlers had some, bangers during the regular season here, Sean. I just thought he was very involved, very active. Puck was on his stick a lot of time today, Sean. 7 shots on goal, 13 shot attempts, and a block shot in 19 shifts for 14:37. So again, he had lots in the tank. I thought he was moving around really well. I thought he was playing incredibly hard. very involved in the game. And when Nikolai Ehlers is dancing around and driving, he is a handful for opponents, both at even strength and on the power play. And when Nikolai Ehlers is playing like that, he can be incredibly dangerous. And again, this is something I talked about this with Ehlers in LA, Sean, on that last road trip. Nobody knows better than Ehlers what the numbers were. 4 goals in 40 games going into tonight, 15 points. Well, he's up to 18 and he's up to 6 goals. I mean, is that good enough? No, it is trending towards where he wants it to be. It's not just about points, but he's a point producer and he has to produce points to go along with the other effort level things. So I see him trending in the right direction, and he's a guy that can be a real force in a series that will be very tightly contested for me.
There was one point tonight you didn't like one of his plays where he threw the puck on net during the power play, and you thought there's no traffic there. You weren't the biggest fan of it. I think that it's a sign, and what we saw tonight is a great sign of what makes Nikolai Ehlers a good player. I've said this before. He likes to get everything on the net. He's a really direct player, and he's in the end, he works with guys like Adam Lowry. He works with guys like Gabe Vilardi because he's just about getting the puck to the net. So what do we see on the first goal? It's just him getting the puck towards the net. He doesn't get his shot full off, but he gets it towards that direction. It gets into a dangerous area, bounces off the post. It's right there for Gabe Vilardi to clean up. Second goal, he's just firing it across to the front of the net. But this is one of those things, right? How many times have you seen Nikolai Ehlers use that speed to get an opening down the wing, and he throws a low angle shot on net, right? It doesn't always go in. It usually doesn't go in, but it's just this mindset of him trying to create chaos when he gets there. And that second goal that goes in, it's a goal by Nikolai Ehlers because he's getting it towards the front of the net. He's getting it to the net. If it gets through, it has a chance of getting to the player that he's trying to set up, and then maybe he can make something happen with it. But even then, Nikolai Ehlers, I think, understands as much as anybody does that it's going through a dangerous area on the way that he's trying to get it through, and it turned out to be extremely dangerous. And the second goal of this game, and really the thing that I think can put the Dallas Stars back on their heels, because that allowed the Jets to just kind of focus on grinding and wearing them down. They didn't need to be so focused on trying to create more chances. 2 goals is plenty typically for the Winnipeg Jets. Now we can just grind, and if you make mistakes, we capitalize on the mistakes. That's how we generate our offense, but we don't need to go out and generate our offense. Just an example again of Nick Ehlers. It's very simple with him. When he's on, he's getting the puck to the net. He's part of 2 goals tonight because of that. Josh Morrissey, before we move on to the awards.
Just tremendous. 1 assist plus 2, 22, 39, 28 shifts, 1 shot on net, but 8 shot attempts, 1 hit, 2 block shots. This was Norris level Josh Morrissey. It was his best game of the playoffs so far. And again, he was under severe, physical damage in the first round. I mean, so much so that he got knocked out of Game 7. So, it's something that is incredibly tough for him to go through physically, but he's a battler. He had to work incredibly hard to get himself ready to be in this game. We talked about it for days. We expected him back today, but it wouldn't have been easy for Josh to get back to the game. And we understand why he didn't want to share the nature of the injury, which we suspect is a shoulder injury. But he would have had to work incredibly hard in his recovery in the last couple of days to be ready. And he was a force, moving, very involved offensively, defensively. We're going to get to Morrissey in a minute with the awards, but Sean, exceptional effort. And when Josh Morrissey is impacting the game the way that he did today, the Jets are an incredibly dangerous team. I mean, there's no other way to put it. When, again, this is a 4-line team that, leans on everybody. Josh is a top 5 defenseman in the NHL, and he played like it today. And when he plays like it, he can do damage. And again, not just offensive damage, but defensively, he was excellent as well.
I want to bring up this comment here by Joe from Winnipeg. He says, all 3 players that got game stars were criticized for not showing up at the previous series. Guess who showed up now? This is a good point in that the Winnipeg Jets, what's made them good for the entirety of this season is that there's just so many people who get it done for them. I mean, think of, a guy that I really didn't notice much tonight was Vladislav Nemeskov. He had a couple nice plays, right? And he did the things that Vladislav Nemeskov does, but the Jets don't get past the first round if it's not for Vladislav Domestikov. He showed up at the right time, but here we go. And I don't think people were criticizing Nikolai Ehlers for not showing up because he just showed up late in that series off injury, and it takes time for a player to get going. Connor Hellebuyck definitely was criticized for that. I don't think any of us think that Josh Morrissey was at the height of his powers. I think he actually
didn't mean that he didn't show up, though. I mean, that's
none of us ever said that the player didn't show up. But I think what Joe from Winnipeg is trying to say is Josh Morrissey was maybe the best version of Josh Morrissey. Did we see in that series? No, I think he was extremely affected by the rugged nature of that series and the way that he was targeted incessantly by the St. Louis Blues. Comes out on this night, has his most Josh Morrissey-like performance that we've seen so far from him. I'm just starting to think more and more that this is, and okay, here's something to say. If we're talking about these three players not showing up in the first round of the series, not Ken's and my words, but I get what Joe from Winnipeg is trying to say. Sometimes, and this is the thing about the playoffs, is you have to dig in and you have to beat one specific team, right? You don't get to move on from the Blues after they play you tough and then go to the next game against the Anaheim Ducks and the next game against the Vancouver Canucks. You got to dig into that team and beat them 4 out of 7 games. And sometimes some players are more stylistically advantageous in those series. It's why rugged, rough players like Barron looked really good in that series, and like Jared Anderson-Dolan and David Gustafsson looked good in that series. This series looks like it's not that there's not hits, but it looks like it's going to be more contested on a skill-based plateau, right? And because of that, you would expect the skill-based players of the Winnipeg Jets to be the ones to show up in this situation. Nikolai Ehlers clearly fits that mold. Gabe Vilardi fits that mold. Josh Morrissey fits that mold. It's not a surprise that these players, it's not necessarily not showing up. It's that the Jets had enough depth to have players that played a different style of hockey to get them through the St. Louis Blues series. And now they've got depth in a different kind of player to potentially get them through this next series against the Dallas Stars. Ken, let's get to the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. It comes right after what is probably going to be our hashtag the keg save of the game.
Yeah, no doubt. And speaking of Josh Morrissey, just 2 exceptional plays, Sean, all wrapped up into one. It starts with very sound defensive positioning by Morrissey. The puck scoots over to Evgeny Dodonov. Really great save by Hellebuyck that we're going to dig into in a minute. But where the puck goes, Wyatt Johnston thinks he is going to have a backdoor tap in that is uncontested. But Josh Morrissey has other ideas. He boxes out Johnston, prevents him from getting a stick on it. And then while he's down on the ice, Josh has the presence of mind to scoop the puck out of danger so that a goal cannot be scored. Like, this is high-level chess type of activity. And Josh kind of brushed it off as desperation, Sean. That was not a desperation play. That was a perfectly played defensive effort followed by, like I said, super sharp, recognizing where the puck is at all times. If it was desperation, he could have scooped it into his own net. This was not desperation. He knew where the puck was going. He sent it into a less, out of harm's way and into a less dangerous area because of his smarts. Yes, there's some level of desperation involved in the play, but that was not just desperation. That wasn't just luck. It's something that worked out for him. That's an elite talent making a high-end play.
Oh man, he sees where the puck is coming from, boxes out an extremely difficult player to box out, to keep the puck, keep himself in between the puck and that player, and then has the wherewithal to wait till the puck has exited the crease and then swipes it away with his hand after that. That is a phenomenal Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? You need to look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that is the Johnston Group, the Kenny and Renny OGs Got You Covered play of the game, which dovetails nicely, Ken, into the keg save of the game. Take it away.
Yeah, and just exceptional push by Hellebuyck to get across. on that Dodonov play. I mean, honorable mention on the one on Rope Hintz that preserves the shutout. But to me, this is Hellebuyck's game in a nutshell. Hellebuyck seeing the ball. I'm thinking about baseball here, Sean. You might actually get to see the Texas Rangers next week. But anyways, Hellebuyck pushing across. And watch the replay, folks, if you haven't watched it enough already. It's not just a glove save. He gets the cheater of the glove on the shot, which looks like it's labeled. But just he's seeing the puck incredibly well. When Hellebuyck is locked in, he anticipates so incredibly well. And that's what I saw today. I saw anticipation. I saw confidence. I saw belief. And I saw a guy who, we saw the guy that was up for the Vezina Trophy for his third victory and a guy who's up for the Hart Trophy. That's what I saw from Hellebuyck today. And Hellebuyck said it himself. When all those things are feeling right and dialed in, it can be dangerous. Now, Hellebuyck needs to go out on the road and continue to play the way he did at home in games 1 and 2.
I touched on him earlier on. You know how I feel about where he's at right now. Phenomenal game by Connor Hellebuyck. And I don't want to be, I think the Jets were the better team in this game. I think they controlled far too much of that game to say anything else. The Dallas Stars, though, and I understand why their head coach would say this. The Dallas Stars, they're a cagey team. I didn't think they were the better team in game 1, but they found a way to win, and I don't think it was a fluke. And if this team is able to get up on you, I think you're going to have difficulties if that's the scenario. And if Connor Hellebuyck wouldn't have had the heroics he had tonight, I could see this as being one of those kind of games which are the worst games to lose in the playoffs, where the Jets absolutely dominate the game for the most part and then somehow end up on the wrong side of the score sheet, now heading down to Dallas and having to answer questions and say things like, well, we've liked our game. We think we're doing the right things. We just need a couple bounces, or we need to lock down at the certain times of the game. It's extremely frustrating and difficult when you lose games that you should win. If Connor Hellebuyck doesn't show up tonight, there's a chance the Winnipeg Jets lose a game that they should have won on this night. And because of that, and that glove save, they end up where they end up on this night. So that is both Ken's and my keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show would be Simmer6 at Simmer6. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And that brings us to our Lampy. Share with us your Lampy, folks. What do you got, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, the Jets needed both Gabe Vilardi and Nikolai Ehlers to get on the board with goals, their first of the playoffs. But to me, it's the Lowry goal because of what it encompasses. It encompasses a churning shift from the fourth line that opens the door and sets the table. And then it has the third line, the identity line, sticking together, doing all kinds of smart things, getting the puck around to the defenseman in Dylan DeMello. DeMello gets the shot through. Appleton didn't quite tip it, but he was there for the screen. Puck comes off the end boards, and there's Adam Lowry depositing the loose change into the back of the net to extend the lead to 3. And again, it wasn't a sapping of the will, but it really made it an uphill battle for the Stars in that game. So I'm going with the Lowry goal by the Jets at 11:02 of the second period as my lamplighter today, because that's a repeatable goal, even though it's a bounce off the end boards, but that's a repeatable goal because of everything that happened leading up to the goal, starting with the previous line shift.
Ken, right before they score that goal, I turned to you and do you remember what I said to you?
No.
If you don't,
at 148, I do not remember, but I probably should.
I had said they are doing exactly to the Jets what the Blues did to the Jets in Game 3. If you take that, they're working the boards, and the Dallas Stars are trying to defend the same way that the Winnipeg Jets do, where they swarm the puck. And what happens is the Jets just swing it all the way around, up, around underneath the net, underneath the goal line, back up the boards, and the Dallas defender cannot get to that puck carrier. And what it does is it means all the Dallas Stars players, once that happened, they're down in the corner, they turn, and they're skating like crazy to get back into position, right? And then the Jets send it back down around the net, like the same way. And now what happens is, if you're the Dallas Stars, you're the Jets, you get the Dallas Stars defense and defenders going like this way to that way, this way to that way. It doesn't, what that does is, if you want to take a shot on net, it's hard to get into shooting lanes because you're skating like crazy to get into the shooting lanes. And because you're skating in a direction, if the Jets can pass the puck back against the flow to another player, now you're caught in the going in the wrong direction, and you have to turn the other direction. You can't get set. You can't get set in your defensive structure when the play is going on like that. The Dallas Stars never get set in their defensive structure, and it ends up allowing Adam Lowry to be by the side of the net and tap a puck into the net after a situation like that. You can't get set up like that. So listen, what Pete DeBoer could be looking at is exactly how Scott Arniel responded to what the St. Louis Blues were doing at the beginning of Game 4, when they had that great first period and the great first half of the second period, because they made adjustments that allowed them. They became less aggressive, and they started having guys collapse a little bit further back. So those pucks that get strung around the boards are at least contested in that situation, and buys your defense time to get back into the situation and get set up. But you're right. Because of that, because you get the defense kind of swinging all over the place, those end up in goals, and they can be shots from the point, tips, tap-ins from the side of the net. That's what happens when you don't allow guys to get set up, and that's why I agree with you, Ken. That's the TCB lamplighter of the game. It doesn't matter what we think, though. Share with us your TCB lamplighter. You're automatically entered to win at the end of this series, a frosty, delicious 15-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale. Also, a pizza at the place that I think has the best pizza in the city of Winnipeg, and a Lamplighter hoodie. If you can't wait for those things to be gifted to you from Kenny and Renny, you can head on down to 11290 Kenniston, join them in their tap room where you can get all those things. Check it out. Absolutely great environment. And our winner from our last show, that would be Miller Time ZB60Z. Miller Time ZB60Z. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. You will be entered to win the prize pack at the end of this round. Once all the games are done, we will do a pick of those people. But your name is in the hat, Miller Time. Make sure you direct message me so that I have your information should you win. Also, I'd like to add to this, I've had tons of people reach out to be part of the year ender, where we sender, the Kenny and Renny year end party. This room is over half full. We're selling 170 tickets this year, and I can tell you right now, there's a large portion of people who always come to this thing that I know. They tell me, I call them and it's at that time. So though half the room is filled, the other half of the room is potentially almost spoken for. So this is the dinner bell ringing. If you're coming to this party, it's time to start reaching out, so you know what to do. Direct message me. Get a hold of me however you need to get a hold of me. Try and get your tickets set aside. It doesn't mean we're going to hold you to a date that you can't make it to. It means that you've got a spot if you want it. If you can't make it, you can vacate that spot and we'll pass it out to someone else. But if you want to make sure that you get to the K&R year ender where we send her, you got to get a hold of me. You got to get on the list, folks. Anything to say before we go, Ken?
Nope. Fun games, safe travels. Sorry I won't be there with you, but we'll be at Game 6 if there is one, and I expect there will be one.
We should weigh in on this quickly. Big Hitter says, can you talk about the no suspension on Roy? I wanted to bring this up because Ken asked me about this. You'll notice if you watch this play, and by no means am I saying because I'm coming up with an explanation, am I saying that there's no reason this should be a suspension. I think it should be a suspension. That said, I think the reason that the Department of Player Safety may have given him a break on this, if you notice the play, Frederick is before the cross-check, Frederick starts what looks like he's going to cross-check Roy in the face and stops himself halfway. And before he stops himself, Roy starts his cross-check. I think this is a scenario by which the Department of Player Safety is giving Roy a break, because I think Roy everyone's looking at it and saying, why the heck does he do this? And I'm looking for an explanation, Ken, too, because he's not this kind of player. And this just isn't a scenario in which a guy just out of the blue cross-checks a guy in the face. I think Roy thought he was about to get cross-checked in the face, and he started with the response, and it was a knee-jerk reaction. I'm not explaining it away. I think you can't do that and get a suspension. But if I'm looking for a reason why he may not have got a suspension, that's what I think the Department of Player Safety saw that would have them come to the decision that they came to. Anything that you want to add to that?
Not really. I mean, I
go back and look at the play, folks. You'll see what I'm talking about.
His stick is up, but I don't think his stick is at the chin level, personally.
It's not.
If he's going to cross-check him, it's in the chest. So I don't like the response by Waugh. I mean, I'm all for guys playing hard. Sometimes clean players do dirty things, and I think that's a dirty play. I mean, Josh Morris is one of the cleanest players in the NHL, but he cross-checked Eric Stahl up high and got a suspension in a playoff game where he got a 5-minute major. So this is a miss to me. I mean, this isn't as big a miss as the Arvidsson obvious trip on Braden McNabb that happened to the shift before the goal was scored. But again, and I'm going to tell you why I think it's a miss, Sean. These guys have a hard job. I totally get it. It's one of the hardest jobs out there. But this is behavior that you cannot allow to happen. This can't be normal. You can't allow people to go around cross-checking people in the face, even if it's accidental, even if it's not an injury. You don't want people having their sticks at the head level, which is why it has to be a suspension. It doesn't have to be 5 games, but that there has to be a deterrent. This is the same thing. I hate that hitting from behind is not penalized stiffer. Don't make it normal for being able to cross-check people in the face. That I don't want that. I don't want that to be happening. I want hitting. I want hard hitting. I want hard play. Sometimes players will go over the line, but anyways, I don't want to see that happen with more frequency.
So I couldn't agree with you more, and I want to make sure that people know that I'm not saying this. I think it should have been a suspension. I think that you want to get head contact and those kind of things out of the league. So I think because of that, I'm just saying, if you're looking for an explanation of why, I think that's the explanation. I think that the DOPS thinks that the movement by Roy is triggered by the movement by Frederic, and he just follows through on something that Frederic doesn't follow. Go look at it, folks. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. It looks like Frederic is starting to cross-check him and then thinks better of it and stops himself, and Roy doesn't stop himself. I'm not saying that makes it excusable. While Bill is saying no excuses, this isn't me saying it happened or he shouldn't have been suspended because of this. I'm just trying to explain how the play came out. And to be honest, if you'll indulge me just for a second, Ken, I wanted to touch on this because I thought about this afterwards. If we can go back to the Shen hit on Scheifele, and I've talked with a lot of people about this, and the way that when we were asked whether this should have been a suspension, or should it have been based on the rule book? And my take on that is it's hard to suspend him in that because it lived in the gray area. I'm just reminding people of my take. I don't think there's head contact. He hits him high up in the chest, but he leaves his feet, right? But by the very letter of the law of what a charge is a hit where you're trying to hurt someone, right? That's what we take away from that. And not every charge is suspended. So I think that was a hard play to suspend Braden Shen there. Now, I want to be clear, and I wanted to connect this to something that I talked about a long time ago and many times on this show. You'll remember me talking about the NFL in the 90s, quarterbacks getting concussions, and they started putting rules into the game where they would protect their quarterbacks. And because of that, guys like Troy Aikman and Steve Young, who had their careers cut short, that stopped happening to and it became the golden age of quarterbacks after that because the league went out and changed the rules to protect its star players. I had suggested that. You didn't like it Because when I use that example, and I'm not talking about you, Ken, I'm talking about the fan base, you didn't like it because I brought it up in a scenario where Kirill Kaprizov was injured against the Winnipeg Jets. And what was your response then? So I think they're comparable things, right? Because what happened? Braden Shen took a penalty. He charged Mark Scheifele and knocked him out, and Mark Scheifele ended up getting hurt because of that penalty. But maybe it's hard to suspend that guy because it's just a penalty. Well, Brendan Dillon at that time cross-checked Kirill Kaprizov in the ribs and took him out for a certain amount of time. It's a penalty. You're not supposed to cross-check people, but the Jets fan base was totally offside with me at that time. And all I was trying to say is, look, we're in a league where it doesn't pay off to have the star players like Kirill Kaprizov, like Kyle Connor when it happened to him and he was kneed and the player Strome didn't get suspended, or Mark Scheifele where he gets knocked out and that player's not suspended. The fan base was totally against me on that one because you loved the fact that Brendan Dillon had knocked Kirill Kaprizov out. Be honest with yourselves. That's exactly what it was, but it's the same thing. It's an illegal play that ended up hurting a player. And at that time, I was saying you need to change the rules so that you can protect the stars in the game. A lot of people didn't like that, although I bet a lot of those same people are wanting Mark Scheifele to be, Braden Shen to be knocked out of that series because of his hit on Mark Scheifele. I'm saying you need to be finding a way where there are plays like the Braden Shen hit, like the Brendan Dillon cross-check, like the knee from Strome on Kyle Connor, where you say, look, we don't want our stars being knocked out. And if we think a play was pulled off, whether it's a penalty that by the rules of the rule book are not suspendable or in those gray areas, we can capitalize on those gray areas and say, you don't do this to our star players. I wanted to make that connection because I talked about the gray area, and I think that people walked away from that thinking that I think it's okay for Mark Scheifele to get knocked out of that series. I don't. I'm connecting this to a theme that I've been going with for a lot of years. Keep the star players in the game. The game is better off with it. I hope now that you're seeing this through the Winnipeg Jets lens and something that happened with Mark Scheifele, and I connect it to the Minnesota Wild and the Jets taking a player out in that situation, you can fully understand where I come from and what my take is on that. We want the star players playing in the game. We don't want them knocked out. So if there's a gray area where the DOPS can say, look, we take a look at Braden Shen and he leaves his feet, there's no head contact. If it was head contact, we could suspend him like that, but it's just a charge that turned out a different way and we're not sure if it went that way. You want the DOPS to be able to say, listen, we don't want guys trying to knock star players out by taking penalties that end up knocking players out. So we're going to suspend that guy. Brendan Dillon, he cross-checked him in the ribs. You know what? That happens all the time. Sure. All you fans, or a good chunk of you Jets fans were saying to me, oh, well, maybe if he wasn't such a wimp or whatever. That's not the response. You either protect the stars or you don't. You protect the stars when they're not on your team. You protect the stars when your team is taking that star out, or you protect the stars when they're on your team and you're trying to keep your Winnipeg Jets players from not going out. I connect those situations. I see them as all being the same. Find a way to protect the stars and things turn around in this situation.
Yeah, and even this is unrelated to injury caused by force, but I want Miro Heiskanen in the series. The series would get better if Heiskanen gets back in the Stars lineup. I mean, that's as a fan of hockey, I want to see the Stars with Heiskanen in the lineup also at some point. Is he going to be at his peak power? No, but this is one of the best players in the NHL, and this series will get even better than it's been through 2 games once he is healthy enough to return.
Okay, excellent stuff. Thanks for staying with us, folks. Almost an hour and 20 minutes. I don't know why we're still going at 2 a.m. I got a flight to catch tomorrow morning. It's going to be a good one. We hope you found that this show was a good one for you all. If you do appreciate the conversations happening in this space, we implore you to appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, the Kenny and Renny OGs and the Johnston Group, TransCanada Brewing Company, of course, the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We'll do this again, folks, just a couple days from now after Game 3 between the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars. The Jets go for their first playoff win on away ice these playoffs. We'll talk to you after that. Bye-bye.